Let's talk some more of the best fantasy books of all time. I'm here for part three of my top 100 fantasy books of all the ones that I've read, 2024 edition. Let's see what else I can add to your TBR today. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Today, just Jim here with part three of the top 100 fantasy books I've read. I've got some more great books for you here today. If you haven't checked out part one and part two, you're going to want to go back and do that because there's 40 books waiting to be discovered. But today, we're starting at number 60 and working our way up to number 41. So many good books. These are not necessarily the best books based on all possible criteria. They're my best books, and I'll stand by my list. I hope you'll enjoy what I talk about here today. Let's see what we've got. Number 60. My first Wheel of Time book to make this list. I know some of you were wondering, where, Jim? Where's the Wheel of Time? Number 60 is Crossroads of Twilight, book 10 of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time, coming out in 2003. Of the core 14 books, most people feel this is the weakest of the books, but it's a weak book of a great series. I don't have an issue with this book, just related to all the rest. It's down here. It's number 60 on my list. You're going to see more Wheel of Time on this list. It's a matter of where they go. Number 59, Beyond the Shadows, Night Angel Trilogy, Book 3. This is also by Brent Weeks, published in 2008, and finishes the trilogy on my top 100. I already gave you Book 1, The Way of Shadows, which was number 75, and then Book 2, Shadow's Edge, which was 68. It's nice when a trilogy gets better with each book. But yeah, bringing it home, this final one, grand conclusion, Kyler Stern goes the final level and inherits the mantle that he will now carry on into the future. There's some massive magical events that happen here, and yeah, it's a great story. I love the way this trilogy wrapped up. Number 58, The Power That Preserves, Book 3 of the original trilogy, The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant by Stephen R. Donaldson, published way back in 1978. So I already gave you Book 1, Lord Fowl's Bane, way down at number 82. We get all the way up here to 58 for Book 3. What about Book 2? It's coming, but it's the best of the trilogy, my opinion. Number 57, a standalone fantasy novel. I don't have many like that. I read so many trilogies and series, but this one is Tegana by Guy Gavriel Kay, published in 1990. I first read Kay's original trilogy, his first published works, The Fiona Var Tapestry. Yucky. I know some of you like it, but I did not care for that trilogy at all. But then I went to read his next book, Tegana, and it blew my mind. This is an amazing story. So well crafted, fantastic characters, a magical problem that was unique and well executed in the story, and the ending delivers. Tegana, great. I haven't read anything else by Guy Gavriel Kay, but I will. There's more on my TBR, not because of the Fiona Var Tapestry, but definitely because of Tegana. Number 56, Deadhouse Gates, Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 2. This is the first of the core Malazan books on my list. I gave you Knight of Knives, the first novel of the Malazan Empire by Ian C. Esselmont, back at number 64, so not too far back. But this one by Steven Erikson came out in 2000. It's before Knight of Knives. It's great, but it's also really hard to get through. There is a tough sequence in this book that lasts for a massive amount of the book. It's supposed to be hard to get through. I'm sure Steven Erikson does this to us on purpose. Nevertheless, this was a Oh man, it was hard. I had to push to get myself through this book. I look back on it very fondly. So it's definitely in my top 100, but it's the lowest of the core Malazan books I've read. Number 55, here it is, The Ill Earth War, The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, Book 2, the middle book of the trilogy, which Zach is going to be shocked. A middle book is the best, in my opinion. This one, 1978. The rest of the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, there's a second trilogy, and then there's a finishing quadrilogy or quartology or whatever you want to call it. Anyways, those aren't down the top 100. I've read them all. None of them are as good, in my opinion, as the original trilogy. They're still great books. They're just not in my top 100. Number 54. Let's get some more Stephen King in here, and this time, genuinely epic fantasy. Book 7 of The Dark Tower, which is the final concluding book of his epic, decades-lasting Dark Tower series. This is a love it or hate it series. It came out in 2004. I really enjoyed the finish. I recently reread it, enjoyed it even more. But some people just hate The Dark Tower. And then there were people who will die on this hill. It's the best thing King's ever written. I'm neither one. I'm kind of in the middle. That's why it's kind of in the middle. The Dark Tower, Book 7, number 54. Number 53 is my next Wheel of Time book, The Path of Daggers, number 8, Robert Jordan, 1998. The Path of Daggers sits right in what people call the slog. It's not sloggy to me. I enjoy this story, but there are certainly elements that you get a little bit of, yeah, can we get on already? Can we move this along? And some details that are rich in detail, and some people can justifiably think are too rich, and we should get on to some more action. Advance these plot points. But part of it is just there's so many different plots to follow. I like The Path of Daggers. I love what it adds to the series, but it's number 53. There are better ones. Number 52, Daughter of the Empire. This is the 5th book of the Rift War cycle by Raymond E. Feist, published in 1987. When I first read this book, it was after reading the initial 4 books of Rift War, which are great epic fantasy tales. We got some sword and sorcery going on. It's delightful. And then this was a complete shift. And I didn't really like it. I later reread it and loved it. I think I just was too young in my fantasy reading to truly appreciate what I was reading the first time. But Mistress of the Empire is rich and fantastic. It throws you into a totally different planet with a culture that's very Asian themed, but blending in with some old Roman centurion type approaches and legislature style of living. What Feist did was a nice blend, fusion of cultures, and he made it work. So I really liked Daughter of the Empire, and that's number 52. I should point out, by the way, this 1987 book was not Raymond E. Feist by himself. Janny Wurts, a renowned fantasy author in her own right, co-wrote this book. And number 51 is the second book in this Empire trilogy. Again, Raymond E. Feist and Janny Wurts. This comes out in 1990, simply advances the story more, and it's a little better than the first one. And guess what? Number 50 is the finish of the trilogy. So Rift War number 7, the 3rd book in the Empire trilogy. Raymond E. Feist, Janny Wurts, comes out in 1992, and it's a great conclusion. This is the only place in my top 100 where I have a clean sweep. Boom, boom, boom. A trilogy going from beginning to end, getting better by each book, all in a row. It's kind of unique. Definitely recommend that trilogy if you have not read it. Number 49, Wolves of the Kala. This is number 5 of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King again. This one came out in 2003. 5 books better than the conclusion of the series. That does say something about my feelings about the last book. It also, unfortunately, says something about the rest of the saga because I have no more Dark Tower here on my top 100. Wolves of the Kala is my favorite of the series. I like all of the books, but the rest of them just aren't as strong as the others on my top 100. The Dark Tower peaks out at number 49 with Wolves of the Kala, very much an old-style Western for this book, with lightsabers? Okay, I'm not going to say anything more about that. Number 48 is another Wheel of Time book, A Crown of Swords, Book 7. Now, there's 14 books in the main course of the Wheel of Time, and yeah, there's a prequel too. This is the third of these books making it on my list. We're all still just kind of in the middle here, so these are, for me, some of the weaker Wheel of Time books, but they're still great books, solidly in my top 100. Robert Jordan published this one in 1996. Number 47. Let's get some more Joe Abercrombie in here. The Last Argument of Kings. The First Law Trilogy, Book 3. I've only read the initial trilogy so far of the First Law series. I gave you Book 2 way down at number 65, so 18 books ago. But the finish is that much better and is this much higher up on my list. This came out in 2008. There's a lot of wild magic that happens in this book and some big revelations. And grimdark. Again, definitely grimdark. Number 46, time to get back to Pern. I love these Pern books, man. So Merida, Dragon Lady of Pern, which is the 7th book in the Pern series. It's the first book after the initial 6 books, which all take place in the initial era of the Pern books. This one goes back in time a bit, in more ways than one. But no more about that. So this is the first one to appear on my list since I put the White Dragon in at number 61. So this is 15 books better on the list. It's also now the 7th Pern book that's appeared here, and I've only read 14 of them, so that's pretty good. Anne McCaffrey published this in 1984. Number 45, back to Malazan. We've got Gardens of the Moon, Book 1. Steven Erikson published this initial Malazan book in 1999, and I've got it on the list 11 books higher than Deadhouse Gates, which was today, but all the way back at 56. We have a bit of a drop-off between Book 1 and Book 2, in my opinion. But there are more Malazan books to come. Never you worry. Number 44, let's finish off that First Law trilogy. So the opening book, The Blade itself, is number 44. Joe Abercrombie dropped this in 2006. So I really feel the opening book of the trilogy was my favorite. It's, just a little bit better than the finish. That middle book, that's the one that drops off a bit. It's still great. They're all on my top 100. So fantastic. And I look forward to reading more of First Law. Not this year, but I have it planned for next year. Number 43, let's finally get back to The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Again, this is one of my favorite fantasy series, urban fantasy done so well. And this time, Deadbeat, Book 7 in the series. I give you Turncoat, Book 11, all the way back at number 81. So we're jumping up 38 higher on the list to bring you Deadbeat. Deadbeat is so good. It's really funny at times. It also just delivers in some great ways, bringing some key characters into more relevance. Butters, Mouse, Necromancy. That's not a character. That's an element of the story. Very important. Jim Butcher dropped this in 2005. Number 42, more Wheel of Time. This time it's Winter's Heart, Book 9. This one, it could be lower, except for the ending. The ending is freaking awesome. It's one of my favorite endings of the series. So it gets all the way up here at number 42. Robert Jordan published Winter's Heart in 2000. And my last book for today, as I only give you 20 more books in the series, is House of Chains, Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 4. This is the third of the core Malazan books that I've brought to you here. I've only read 8 of them so far. Steven Erikson published House of Chains in 2002. It was really good. And yet I've got 40 books that are better than it. Come back tomorrow. I'll give you 20 more. If you have thoughts on the ones I shared today, though, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I always respond, and I love seeing you share about your experiences with these books. And feel free to tell me what you really agree with, what you're shocked is so low, what you really disagree with. How can it even be in the top 100? And we can dialogue. It's so fun to talk about fantasy books. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.